All right. Thanks for those of you that stuck around. Oh, thanks for moving. That's great. I'm not talking all the way to the back. I want to talk a little bit about creating a culture of learning innovation. Again, for 4 years, I was the Chief Innovation Officer at St. Leo University. If you don't know them, check them out. They've got truly 3 modalities. They've got fully online, fully on ground, and centers all over the United States. And what you're about to see is the framework that I put together to work with the folks there. I told you I would start by talking a little about paradigms, which can also be a connection killer from the last session. For the first 50, 55 years that we really started tracking things like employee satisfaction, but also started looking at what employers wanted. And you've seen these lists your entire life, I'm sure. This was the list that generally you saw. The top 5 things, top 6 were these sorts of things. Communicate, become efficient, be an expert, loyalty, and work ethic. That's what employers wanted in employees. In 2005, according to Jacob Morgan, and you'll see his citation here in a second, he wrote a book called The Future of Work. And in 2005, that list changed fairly dramatically. In 2005, the first thing on the list was now they wanted people who could embrace change. Interestingly, they didn't want people who were okay with change. They wanted people who liked change. I think that if you really want to experience what I'm talking about, go down the road to Silicon Valley, get onto the Apple campus or the Microsoft campus or wherever you can Google whatever you want, and ask them how excited that they are about the upcoming release. I mean, just look at the line for the iPhone that just came out. All right, now these are citizens, but if you were to ask people at those companies, hey, are you excited about the next thing, whether it's hardware or software or whatever it might be, I'm going to guess 99.9% of the time you're going to hear, oh, I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. It's going to let me do things that I don't even know I can do. It's going to give me functionality I'm not even aware of today. I really can't wait. I hope that they get it out soon. At the same time, then go to any college campus in America and say, hey, we're about to switch from LMS version 2.6 to 2.7 and see what comes of that. Oh, for the love of God, no. I just figured out where the buttons are. Please don't move anything. Please don't switch anything. I do not want you to change the system at all. We are trying to help people get jobs with employers who want people who like change from an industry that abhors change. We hate it. We loathe it. We can write fantastic, wonderfully semantic, rhetorical arguments about why we shouldn't do it. And our constituents, our students, need it. So if you look at the list, embrace change is number 1 up there. At the same time, they now want people who are leaders. Now, notice that that's not on the old list because that was associated only with management. Today, it's associated with everyone. They want people who can lead in these small pockets of teams and small groups. At the same time, they want people who are autonomous. It is estimated that sometime in the next 5 years or so, more than half of the population will not work from a specific location. They'll work from wherever they want to work. That is going to require some degree of being able to handle your own stuff. Now, I still know a lot of professors who say, oh, they can't do it, my students can't do it, they can't possibly do that. We'll teach them. Let's help them get there. It's important if they want to get hired into jobs that they want. At the same time, though, they need to be able to collaborate. Now, notice that it's not on the other list. Why? Because teamwork really wasn't teamwork. It was group work done in parallel. That's typically, they wanted you to get along, sure, with your colleagues, yes. But there really wasn't much in the way of interdependence between 2 kinds of jobs. Now, if you really want to see how higher ed has tried to embrace collaboration, you can start here. Here's what I'd like you guys to do. Now, at your tables, I would like you to all grab hands. All right, everybody at your table, grab hands. Sorry, yeah, if you want to join one of the other groups, you can. It's up to you. All right, now here's the thing. You guys are on a boat. That boat is sinking. You have got 30 seconds to figure out who's going to get in the life raft, and one of you, unfortunately, is not going to make it. The one that's not going to make it, I want you to release. Everybody else grab hands, and here's the problem. The one who's not going to get in the boat, you're going to die. All right, the water's too cold, there's sharks, polar bear, whatever you want to say. You're not going to make it, okay? You have 30 seconds to figure it out. Go. All right, looks like you've all figured it out. Okay, very good. Quickly, I'd like the people who got into the water, I'd like you to stand. All right, give them a round of applause. They took one for the team. Well done. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, have a seat. Have a seat. Now, there's a problem with that exercise. I'm not going to ask you to say it because some of you won't want to offend me. I already know what the problem is, and I'll say it out loud. It's stupid. That thing we just did is stupid, right? Because you know you're not going to die. You're not in water. It's the silliest farce, right? I guarantee that when some of you heard, you're in a boat, your first response was, oh, here we go. And then when I said one of you's got in the water, I'm sure half of you were like, whatever, I'll do it, whatever. Right? Because you don't care, because it's silly. That's how we teach teamwork in higher education, much of the time. We put people on the moon, and we tell them to create a list of things. We give them these activities that are not real. There's no sense of interdependence, so it's very difficult to say that we ever create team projects. Far more accurate to say we create group projects, because those groups are filled with individual people who are doing individual work, right? But interdependence and the need for some sort of activity that can't be done by a single person, that's really what we're talking about with a group. You can see how this works in real life. Look at television, how it's evolved over time. So 50 years ago, you had the lone lawyer who could convince anybody to confess on the stand, right, the whole thing. Today, you see teams of collaborative experts who are working together. They have each other's backs. You've got forensic science working with law enforcement, working with legal. You had all these people working together. 50 years ago, you had the lone doctor who was going to save the town or save the community or save the whomever by doing all the research that needed to be done. He was just smart enough that he could handle all of it. Today, it doesn't matter if it's a drama or a comedy. This is how we work. We work in teams. They are interdependent. They rely on each other. They're collaborative. 50 years ago, here's a literal picture from Purdue University. The lone teacher standing at the front with the chalkboard, the students sitting at the tables. Here's today. Crap. There's not much difference, except the picture's in color. We don't model this. Team teaching is less than 3% of all teaching in the United States. So we don't team teach with another professor. But at the same time, how we teach teamwork is based on silly little projects, or worse, we just give them a project and say, good luck. How do we assemble teams? Well, they're seated close to each other, so you're a team, go. Online, we randomize it and let the LMS do some sort of random team. What a horrible way to group people together. What's your strength? What are your weaknesses? I don't know, but my last name was this and their last name was this, so therefore, that's silly. We don't do that. In the workforce, we actually give people the ability to evaluate one another. Do we do that in school projects? Not very often. A few do, but not very much. We really need to be giving people project management skills, because everybody hates group projects, right? They hate team projects because everybody feels they've been unfared upon in those situations. Give them a system like a free board like Trello and say, look, here's who's responsible for what. Here's who's tracking it. Here's if it's been turned in, done. When I do this in my classrooms, I can see every single thing that has or has not been turned in, the date it was turned in, and therefore there's no more he said, she said. Oh, but he wouldn't let us participate. Oh, she did all the work. Oh, no. It doesn't matter. I can see what happened in progress. I get added as a member to the group. We can teach collaboration. We don't do it very often because we have to grade everyone individually. We can still do that, but we've got to prepare them for something other than this. In our universities, we have so many silos. It's time to bridge them. We've got to show our students how to work interdependently, how to work as a team, how to work collectively. We've got to talk about the entire going across the life cycle of a student and working that way, rather than saying, hey, I don't know how to register. Oh, sorry, that's not my job. Go to that office, I think. Contact them, I think this is how you do it. I don't even know, look it up. We've got to start working interdependently and showing them, modeling for them how to work interdependently. We've got to teach them how to work independently through group projects that actually help them. And then finally, the last thing on the new list is that they've got to be able to curate and focus. There's a lot of junk on the web. How do we help them figure out what's credible, what's real, what's good, what's effective, what's helpful, versus just taking the first 10 searches that's on. Actually, you know, Google knows how many pages deep you'll go. Most people won't go one page deep. They'll go down 7 links and then they're done. Most people. We've got to stop that. As you look at innovation, I would argue that while we had the lists of things you want to curate for cognition and affection and conation, here's the kind of stuff you want to curate for innovation. There are a lot of things you want to look at. You want to look at change and what that looks like. That's Cotter's change model up there. You want to start looking at other places that you can find how people innovate. I think the Innovator's Dilemma is an outstanding resource for this. The 10 Faces of Innovation, which comes out of IDEO, excellent resources. You want to start to put these things together. It needs to involve communication. It needs to involve change management. It needs to involve ideation. It needs to involve all of this if you want to get to learning innovation. I'm going to let Google innovate for innovation's sake, which usually is synonymous with technology there. But in higher ed, I want to couch it as learning innovation. To that end, I think we need to be very aware of the life cycle of innovation. It looks something like this. It starts with resistance, and then it goes quickly to mockery. Be prepared for that. That's how it works. After you get through mockery, however, you start to find that it's useful. When you get through useful, it becomes a habit, and then you can start to find efficiencies and innovation coming because it's just part of the DNA, part of the fabric, part of how we work. That's how we can get there. So, this is the model that I've created. I want to walk you through a couple of pieces of this model. We don't have time for all 10. But it is a stair-step model. You can certainly skip pieces as you go, depending on the culture of the environment. But this is the model that's based on a lot of other stuff that you saw. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here as I try to create this. It starts with determining the real problem. Not just what is a problem, not a symptom of a problem, but the problem. When I started looking at St. Leo, I showed you this already, 75% of why our students were leaving had nothing to do with academics. So I knew that our problem had to encompass everything. At the same time, you want to create urgency in people. Did you know that in 2026, we're going to lose 15% of our traditional enrollment-aged college and university people? They're gone. You know why? Because in 2008, people stopped having kids. When the recession happened, people stopped having babies. So we are going to see 15% from today. It's about 20% from back then. 15% less available from today. The other students, the non-traditional students, that seems to have plateaued. That doesn't seem to change really in terms of percentage that are coming back. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with 15% less college and university entrants? Oh, we'll go international. No, they're not coming anymore either. What are we going to do? You want to create some urgency? Start looking into those numbers. Now, I want to stop here for a minute. Opportunism. Be opportunistic. Use those moments in time when things are happening to take advantage of other things that you want to get done. This is an image of Cortez. When he landed in the New World, he burned his ships. As a result, his men were pretty motivated, all right? So, burn some ships. Look at the things that are going on and be opportunistic. At St. Leo, we were about to lose our learning management system. Some of you will remember Learning Studio, right? It was going away. When Learning Studio was going away, we at St. Leo were paying over $1 million for Learning Studio every year. And I went to the president and said, look, I can replace Learning Studio with 5 other components that are all going to cost far less than $1 million. Will you let me do that? And by doing so, I knew that I could solve some of those other problems that we were trying to deal with. At the same time, we had the Big 6. This had just come out from Purdue. These are the 6 things that every college or university student needs to go through in order to feel like they've had a satisfying experience, that they've done what they need to do. It talks about mentorship, it talks about internships, it talks about experience. We wanted our students to have all 6 of these. Unfortunately, only 3% of all college students, all university students in the United States have all 6 of those. We wanted to get to a place where we could do that. And then we wanted to be a data shop. We really wanted to use learning analytics to see what we could find in terms of behavior and prediction and all of those sorts of things, but we needed, therefore, more inputs. Our inputs were the same. We had test scores, we had GPAs, which really don't tell us much. We had demographics, which shouldn't tell us as much as they do. We wanted to get to a place where we could tell more than that. We wanted to be opportunistic. I like to look at it like this. Here is my favorite food TV guy, Alton Brown. I don't know if you've ever seen Alton, but his show, Good Eats, is a fantastic learning experience for 30 minutes. You will enjoy what he's showing. I don't know if you'll make it at the end, but you'll enjoy it because he has all kinds of crazy characters that he brings in. He brings in tension and conflict and disequilibrium. But at the same time, he literally might be the smartest person on the planet when it comes to food science. He knows how things work in terms of its molecular setup and its structure. He understands the science behind food as well as the flavors of food. He's a chef, but he's also a scientist. He's fantastic. So when he says something about food, I think, or at least about maybe our kitchens, we should take it seriously. And here's what he says. There should only be one unitasker in an entire kitchen. Everything else should serve double duty. Does anybody know what the unitasker is? There you go. Your fire extinguisher. That is just for extinguishing fires. That's all you should use it for, and that's it. Everything else you should be able to do at least 2 things with. In fact, he would argue you should be able to do 5 or 6 things with every other tool. Otherwise, you are wasting your money. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your funds. You're wasting your resources. I think the same holds true in higher ed. Let's get a bunch of multitaskers. Let's find tools that don't just fix one problem, but fix a lot of problems. Let's find tools that talk across to other tools. How many tools do you know that are picked by one vice president, that 2 years later another vice president picks another tool, but they do the exact same thing, and then 2 years later they both realize it and go, oh, we should pick one, and they go, well, pick mine. No, we'll pick mine. No, we'll pick mine. Oh, we got to get away from that. We got to get to a place where we're actually using our tools and our resources wisely. When we built Lionshare, and if you want to see it, you can actually go to tally.stleo.edu. It's in here. But you can see the components we put together at Lionshare. In order to fix the Learning Studio problem, we needed an LMS, but we also needed other kinds of tools, and I knew it. We needed a shared whiteboard. That's exactly what you see in the upper left-hand corner. The shared whiteboard was our PowerPoint killer. It stopped professors from using PowerPoint. About 25% of our faculty opted in to do this, and they said they'll never go back. It is a place where you can put up a picture and then everybody can draw around it, and everybody can point at it, and everybody can do. It takes away the need for a linear, let me just push at you PowerPoint. It takes that away. By the way, it's free. It's an open educational resource. It became part of our ecosystem. We brought in what you see down on in the lower part. That was a mobile app, as well as we replaced our portal with a social system. Yes, from a technological standpoint, you could get to all the tools you needed to get to in one click. But at the same time, it allowed people to communicate similar to Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp. It let people build community. It let people build affection. Yes, we had an LMS. We had to have an LMS where we have learning and we manage grades and all those sorts of things. But we wove all those things together into Lionshare. Why? Because of the opportunity that we had because our LMS was going away. By the way, all of this cost us less than $500,000. Whereas we were paying $1.1 million just for the LMS before that. So it was kind of a win, 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 win. And then we come to the fun one. This is the best part of innovation from my perspective. I love it. Innovator's DNA talks about the concept of associative thinking. Associative thinking is when you take a context that is not yours and a solution from that context and you bring it into your context. That's associative thinking. That's innovation. That's the difference between innovating and inventing. All right, inventing is when you create something from scratch, something no one's ever seen before, something brand new. That's a different concept. That's a different workshop. Associative thinking is the key to innovating. So let me start with this, and we're actually going to do an exercise about this. Jack Foster, who wrote the book How to Get Ideas, he asks the question, how do you get a great idea? Now, when most people answer that question, they think about it a long time and they say, well, you got to really massage one thing and try to work. He says, no. Here's how you get a great idea. Get a lot of ideas. Don't get one. Get 10. Get 20. Get 30. Why? Because then you can see which ones are working. And you can put more resources into it, more time into it, more money into it. Now think about higher ed for a minute. Just in general, stereotypical fashion, think about higher ed. How do we budget? 1 idea a year? 2 ideas a year? We think about it and think about it. Maybe each department comes up with one. They put them forward, and the president or the CFO or whatever goes, okay, that one, and we'll pick that one. We'll finance them. And then what happens? Well, they try. They start at. They share it with people. They share it at the faculty meeting. They share it at the staff meeting. And then duck and cover begins. Right? The faculty go, oh, this is the idea this year? Great, good idea. I'll be back in my office not talking to you about it anymore. Right? They're not stupid. Because they know it's going away. We're trying one idea. We put all of our eggs in that basket and we're saying that's the one that better work. How foolish. Try 10. Try 12. Try 15. Look at the 2 or 3 that work and then massage those. build those up as you go. So you want to get a great idea? Get a lot of ideas. And then here's how you get a lot of ideas. What would fill in the blank do? Here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to ask you a question. The question is this: can we measure engagement? Or probably better, how would we measure engagement? And I want you to pretend for a moment that you work for one of these companies. Just pick one. Everybody at the table, pick a different one. Okay? Now, this exercise is done by companies literally over days. There are companies who will do this for 3 days. They will get all their people, and I literally mean all their people, into one room. They will put boxes on the table with hats in those boxes. The hats will say IBM or Coca-Cola or Disney or whatever. They will have people reach in, take out a hat, put the hat on, and then for the next 10 minutes, you are an employee of that company, and you need to answer our question as if you're consulting with us, as if you worked at that company. That's what we're about to do here, okay? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick one of those companies and answer the question, how would that company recommend that Ashford measure engagement? If they were sitting at this table, what do you think they would say to, can we measure engagement, and if so, how? How would they respond to that? Go ahead and ideate for a minute. Give it a shot. Jot down notes or thoughts. You can look stuff up online if you have to, but answer the question, how would they recommend that we measure engagement? Go ahead, give it a shot. Students. Yeah. Yeah. For the virtual audience, the question is, how can you measure student engagement, and how would this company recommend that you measure student engagement? Does that help? Okay, I know I didn't give you hours like they take in businesses, but I just want to see how you did. Anybody have an idea you'd like to share? So if so, tell us the company you chose and how you think they would counsel Ashford with that set of questions, how to measure engagement, or can you measure engagement? And Kate, please, if somebody wants to post something, let us know what they said. Yes?
I said I work at Google, and that's the number of clicks on something.
So a Google consultant might look at the number of clicks that you have with all the different systems that you're using, right? So that data will tell you an engagement number. And once you have the number, then you can measure up and down over the course of weeks and months and all that stuff. Excellent. I like it. I like it. What else? Yeah.
So Jeff and I did a combination of Google and the Food Network.
Google and the Food Network. Okay.
So we have adoption and then use. But then we have the use of the thing that Google or the Food Network do in a unique way. So creators are creating based on the inspiration that came from it, and then the ripple effect of other things being created based on the inspiration. So anyway.
Gotcha. I think I got it. So you're looking at the products that get created, and then the new products that result from those products, and then the new products that result from those products, and that's a measure of engagement. That's sort of we had quantitative and now qualitative really kind of coming out of that. I like that. I like that.
We just suggested some additional quantitative, so the duration of time somebody might spend on an activity.
Duration of time. Yep.
They are on that activity.
Good, good, good. Focus and duration. Yeah, was there one online?
Yeah, similar things, measuring how many hits to a particular event or website, an announcement, through via surveys.
Use of surveys. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so Home Depot, they're really big into surveying. That's a big market for them, right? To ask you after. In fact, they'll sometimes even ask you at the register what you thought of the experience. And they try to massage and they try to be agile and then actually move things in certain directions because of the survey results. Excellent. Very, very good. I cannot recommend to you enough that you take this exercise and you make it a formal activity here at school. If you want to create a culture of learning innovation, give people a set of questions or ask people for a set of questions. Survey them. Say, what are the questions that we need to ask and answer? What are those tough things that we're trying to do? What are those issues that we have? Get those out to people and say in a week, in 3 days, in a month, whatever it might be, we're going to come to a room like this, and we are going to sit around and you are going to represent X company or companies. And you're going to tell us how you think they would answer our question. You might even bring in a specialist from one of those companies and actually ask them some of those questions and see how they would respond to those. But actually take time to do so. Capture the information, and then you have to then deal with what that information looks like. So let me show you specifically what I mean. That question I asked at a conference that was put on in 2011 by Nintendo. Nintendo was wondering if they should get into the educational space or not, and so they invited a whole bunch of educational leaders from around the country. I went. It was up in San Francisco. It was a lovely conference. I got to ask a question in the midst of one of their big Q&A sessions. They had 5 game designers down on the stage, and I was up in the auditorium, and I said, can we measure engagement, and if so, how would you recommend that higher education do it? The first designer didn't miss a beat, jumped off his chair, his little director's stool, came up, grabbed the microphone and said, absolutely, you can and should measure engagement. I would just get a camera like this. Grab a Kinect camera. All right? Get something like that, put it up, and actually watch what students' faces do. Now, why did he say that? He said it because you can't fool a computer. You can fool a human. I can think that my students are engaged. They're not necessarily actually engaged because their eye dilation, the wrinkles under their eyes, at the corners of their mouth, your face has all these micro expressions, about 17,000 of them. You can't fool a Kinect like you can fool a person. It looks to me right now like all of you are actually participating and engaged, but I'm sure some of you are not. You might be able to fool me, but you couldn't fool a camera. Now, why do I tell you that story? Because you would have students who lost their mind if you put a camera in front of the classroom, wouldn't you? Whoa, 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 what's privacy? What? You're gonna detect if I'm bored? I'm allowed to be bored and you don't have to know it. That's my right, right? And so now you got this little fight that you might have to have. Well, as an administrator, I have to deal with those ripples and those ramifications. But if I don't even have the premise in the first place, it's not even a conversation. I can't even have it. But if I can have it, maybe I can find a way to satisfy that. So to create a culture of learning innovation, you not only have to create the problem and a sense of urgency, be opportunistic, associate. Create associative thinking moments as you go. The last thing I'm going to recommend to you, and then we'll be done because I've just got about 2 minutes left. Tell stories. Storytelling is not just something that we did thousands of years ago. It's how we live. What you're seeing here is a fantastic set of science experiments that have been done over the last about 7 or 8 years. There is actually this cool thing called mirroring that takes place when you tell a story. What you're seeing is 2 different brain shots. So they take an fMRI machine, little hats now, then they put them on top of somebody's head, and they measure what's going on during storytelling. Here's what's interesting about that. When the storyteller starts telling the story and their amygdala lights up, the listener's amygdala lights up. When the storyteller's neocortex lights up, the listener's neocortex lights up. It's fascinating. When they're really getting into that story, it's mirroring each other. They actually used to call them mirror neurons because they thought there was some sort of neuron transfer that they couldn't identify. It's not that. But here's what happens that's really fascinating. Stop telling a story. Just tell facts. Just give information. You can have a PowerPoint, you can do whatever you want. The teller's brain continues to light up. The receiver's brain goes black. It just stops. Tell stories, because stories is what connects us to other things. When we were doing this at St. Leo, here was our metaphor that we used. We said it's like building a TV cabinet or a home theater over time. If you were building it over time, you would have to create a cabinet that had space for all this stuff, right? Because you have to have your VCR tapes, just like you have your DVDs, just like you have your Blu-rays, just like you have your receivers, because you've collected all this stuff. And then we said, what if we could just start now? Wouldn't you build a home theater differently if you didn't have to worry about the baggage of the past? So we said, well, we'd get a nice TV, we'd get a sound bar, we'd get an Apple TV or a Roku. Done. Much cleaner, much better sound, much less intrusive. That was the metaphor that we used. And you know what? We started to have people come up to us and say, hey, I thought about a new Blu-ray technique. I'm not kidding. The first few times we heard it, we were like, what are you talking about? You know, Blu-ray for our cabinet. That we're not building a cabinet, right? We're building, oh yeah, right, got it. What are you going to do? Well, I used to do it this way, and now I'm going to do it this way. Brilliant. People started to iterate on that, but they started telling us back our story. If you want to help innovation flourish, start telling a story. Eventually, you'll get past mockery into a place where people buy in, and then you'll start hearing those stories come back to you. There's more to it. I would love to come back at some point and go through the whole thing with you, but I hope that this was helpful. Again, you'll get this deck. I encourage you, send me emails. I love to talk about this stuff. Happy to talk. I look forward to those conversations. And maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, I'll come back and I won't have to wait 6. All right? Thanks, you guys. Have a great day.